So you want to break into advertising and you're thinking to yourself, shit, what now? Well, in this episode, I talked to Margot Alais. She's a creative lead at Paper and Spark. Now, when I knew her, she was in account management, and prior to that, she'd actually come from production. And now she's a creative. So this episode is really great because she talks about the things she's learned throughout her journey and how that's helped her to get to where she's got to. Absolute ripper of an episode. So as always, please like, share and subscribe below and enjoy the episode. Hey Margot, welcome to Shoot One Now. Thank you very much for coming on today.
Hello Chris, how are you?
Very well, thank you very well. It's been too long. It's been
very long on a little ex-colleague catch up.
For sure. So Margot, for those who've just logged onto the episode, can you please tell us a bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Margot Alais. I am a creative lead at Paper and Spark. So I do, I guess my main discipline is centered in art direction, but I guess I'm more of a multidisciplinary creative. So I do a lot of animating, illustrations, producing even. I shoot a lot of my own content as well. So yeah, leading the creative.
Oh, a jack of all trades, some might say.
Master of none.
No, don't say that.
Just kidding. I'm actually really good.
I swear. Oh dear. So Margot, take us through your journey. How did you break into advertising?
So I broke into advertising actually in my third year of uni. So I knew I wanted to get into the industry, but I did that interesting little thing that happens when you get towards the end of your degree and you realize everyone's getting internships and you've just been kind of cruising through, going to all your lectures and your tutes and just having a great time. And then you realize, oh crap, like I'm graduating soon and I have nothing lined up. So I had a bit of an existential crisis. And then that semester I had a bunch of really interesting classes, and one of the guest lecturers, or I guess he wasn't really a guest lecturer, he was helping coordinate the unit, and they actually, I was at Sydney University, and they actually plugged in someone from the industry to come in and teach this course. And so I'm like listening to what he's talking about and introducing himself and what he does for a living. And I was like, wow, this is exactly the avenue I want to pursue. So after the lecture, I went up to him and had a bit of a chat, and we vibed instantly, obviously.
What? Did we just become best friends? Yep.
And then he was like, oh, it's a good thing you came up to me because, I was just going there to pick his brain, get some tips, basically what this YouTube channel does, but in a conversation. And instead he was like, oh, I'm actually looking for an intern. Like, are you interested? And I was like, yes.
Oh, there you go.
Absolutely. And so that's how I got a job.
Cool.
So it was really just a total luck, really. And just being in the right place at the right time. And then kind of once I got in there, I started working so where he worked, which is where I got my internship, was a startup called Colloquial. And at the time it was owned by a bigger agency called JWT, which is part of WPP. So even though I was working for a small startup, I had access to much bigger resources. So I got to work with for a lot of big clients as well, which I think was really important to have early on in your career.
Yeah.
Because that's what impresses people, big old clients.
You're not wrong.
Yeah. So I think you can get away with working for smaller clients, I think, when you're later on in your career. But I think at the start, when you don't really have much to show for yourself, like those big wow names really kind of get you through the door, which, I mean, it's stupid, but it works.
I couldn't agree more. It's I think those big clients give you a good grounding, irrespective of the size of agency. I think it's working on the scale of business, an international business preferably, or a national one even.
Yeah.
It really is a lot of the time you're dealing with quite experienced marketers, and especially if you're in account management, that really helps, which is how you started. So
well, I actually started, it's a good thing that the theme is switching lanes, because I actually technically started in content and production. Then I moved into account management. Then I moved into creative.
You out. So you're in a role that's made for you, my friend.
I know. So when I started, it was a content marketing unit for JWT.
Right.
And so we did a lot of production, a lot of, little shoots and stuff, because our main goal was just like pumping out content, whether that be across social, like bespoke platforms and things like that. So that was where I got my start. And because it was a startup, I did have a lot of experience in project management, account management. And I think what I found was after about 2.5 years, I was like, okay, this has been really fun, but because it's a small agency, and I want to, move on in my career and try lots of things and, climb that ladder. I was like, I need to find another opportunity that gives me like just a little bit more, maybe a bit more breadth. So that was when I started thinking about getting more into the traditional advertising space. And because I was already connected to JWT, I figured that would be an easy kind of jump in. And so my boss at the time really helped me and like rallied people at JWT to basically give me a shot in account management, because even though I had this experience, it wasn't like traditional account management experience.
Yeah.
So it took a lot of convincing that like, no, it's fine. Like I'm not gonna dig it up. So it'll be good. So eventually they hired me, and that's how I started my account management journey. And to be honest, like it was a bit of a strategic move in my mind, because what I really wanted to do was get a thorough understanding of lots of different things across the advertising space. And account management is like really the only discipline in that space that you touch every part of the project.
Agree.
Like you're there from start to finish. So if you're a young creative, or if you're a young person looking to get into advertising, you don't know where to start, it's a pretty good place to start, because you're like, even if you do it for a year or two and you're like, hey, it's not my vibe, at least you've witnessed, okay, this is how pitch works. This is how it works in studio, in production, in creative, like, et cetera, et cetera. So that was really good for me. And I learned so much just because I was there for every step.
Yep. Yeah. And I couldn't agree more. That's how I broke in. I initially thought I wanted to be a creative, a copywriter, but
you are creative in my mind, Chris.
Oh, thank you. I mean, I'm dyslexic as well, so dyslexic copywriter doesn't really help. But I think I'm really keen to know, Margot. One thing that I've talked to a lot of creatives about and planners about is managing clients and having relationships with clients.
Yeah.
And now that you're a creative lead, what traits do you think you've learned from the account management end of things that you still are bringing into your new role?
Yeah, so I think it's I think the problem with the traditional advertising roles is the idea that like a creative is completely separate from the client or from that conversation. And that's a problem, because if you're serious about being a creative, you're eventually going to make it to creative director or ECD. And then being on a good term with your clients is so important, right?
Yeah.
Because actually, when you're in that position, it's really less hands-on creative, and it's more like fostering relationships with clients and helping to sell in the work and that kind of stuff. So like having account management skills is actually crucial if you want to be a successful creative long term. So for me, like now, what's really helpful is because I know what it's like to be on both sides of the coin. So I know what the client's gonna say and the feedback, and I'm gonna be like, yes, oh my god, of course, and write it all down. And then like I go to the creatives, I'm like, okay, like sorry to break the news, but this is what's happening, and they're like, ah. So like I've been there. So when I'm presenting work to clients, I know how it's going to go down, and I kind of brace myself for that. And the first thing I do that maybe creatives haven't experienced, because they haven't got that project management, account management experience, is instead of being really defensive and kind of arcing up and being like, well, this is what we recommend, like this is what you should do because you want to kind of level up in the creative world. Well, this is what you have to do. And we're just trying to like help you do that. Like some creatives can get really touchy-feely and just like really upset and defensive. And the first thing I do is I just ask them lots of questions, trying to understand where they're coming from, and also be open-minded to the fact that maybe they might be able to help improve the creative. Because I think like you don't want to make the mistake of assuming the client's, an idiot. And they're like, they couldn't possibly know anything, because sometimes they make a suggestion and it actually works out. And then you look like a dick because you were trying to be all defensive and you're like, no, my work's so good. It's like above reproach.
Yeah.
So I would say like putting on my little account management hat, understanding the feedback, really understanding not just the particular feedback they're giving, but why they're giving it.
Yeah.
You know, all the reasons behind, you know, like they don't just want to make that orange. They want to make it orange because X, Y, Z. And it seems like a bit of a hand-holding moment, but it's actually really important, because a lot of the time it's not the actual feedback, it's understanding the why. And if you understand the why, sometimes the feedback even changes, because you're like, oh, well, if that's your motivation, then maybe the feedback should actually be this, because it's going to get you closer to your goal. You know what I mean? So I'd say that was like invaluable lessons learned there. And it's helped us win pitches. It's helped us win creative. It's helped us get stuff over the line really, really fast. Like some of the fastest, like at the moment, we are doing some seriously fast turnarounds just because our clients trust us and we have a good relationship, and it's down to just, you know, having that account management experience and making them feel like a valued part of the process.
Totally. And the word that comes to mind is confidant, in the sense that irrespective of what vertical you're in within the agency, you should still be a confidant or an expert in that vertical, but still be able to make that first step with the client to say, and understand. And the second word that comes to mind is empathy. And
exactly.
just basically being able to put yourself in their shoes and understand, as you say, the why is so important. And so many people just put the shutters on and just go, no, this is totally wrong for reasons X, Y, Z. I'm outside the industry. Trust me, I know. But then it's like, actually, the reason they might have is a legal reason that no one can really do anything about.
Or the reason they might have is motivated by like sales data that they are very familiar with. You know what I mean? Like I always think like, yes, I'm an expert in this field, but they're also an expert in their field. So it's like, how can we let these come together naturally? Because if I'm like, well, no, this is the best way forward. And they're like, yeah, but actually, if I think about the sales data, it would be really better if the messaging was more like this, you know? And then how can I really argue with that? Because I'm like, well, they're talking about something based on real data in their business that's making a real business impact. So yeah, I think like empathy and confidant and just fostering trust and stuff. And I don't really think that creative should be this like separate little like silo that's like untouched and like has a moat around it with a dragon.
Sacred.
Do not talk to the creatives.
You shall not pass!
It depends when though. I mean, sometimes the drawbridge does go up and you're like, ah, shit, okay. So Margot, this segues really nicely onto the next question. I think everyone's dying to know is how the hell did you make the switch from account management to creative? Like, talk us through that process.
So I think so already the fact that I had some experience in production and content, already that was some good creative experience that I could leverage. And then I was kind of privileged enough to be able to afford to do award school alongside my full-time employment. And I was also living at home. No, I was not living at home at the time. I was living with my partner at the time, but she provided a lot of support for me, and my parents as well provided a lot of financial support as well. So it's like, that was a pretty important step for me to take, but also probably not one I would have been able to take easily had I not had, you know, those resources readily available. And it's also super competitive. So I was lucky that I got in my first try. And it's only a 12-week course. So it's relatively quick. But it is quite a commitment. Like I think it's 2 kind of night classes a week. But it's actually really intense. Well, it's really what you bring to the table. But if you want to do well at it, it's a really intense course. And when you're working full time and you also have a life outside of work and other commitments outside of work, it's, you know, lots of early start. I'm not really a late night kind of gal, but I'm an early start person, just because I like my sleep. So I'd rather sleep at like 8 p.m. wake up at 6.
You grandma.
Yeah, and like that's not to say I'm a morning person, because when I wake up at 6, I hate everybody. This is the worst, but anyway. So yeah, award school was a great step towards that. And I mean, I didn't place in the top 10 in award school. You know, I didn't actually get any of my work on the wall, which to this day I'm like, guys, seriously, like, that's some good shit. You should have put it on the wall. Like, it was good. Like, I stand by that. But anyway, so I didn't get anything on the wall and I didn't place top 10. But even though I didn't get any of those things, it still was, you know, I still had about 10 pieces of work in my portfolio. And on top of that, I also had all these industry contacts. And on top of that, it was just like a nice thing on my CV that like, oh, look, I have these credentials now.
Yeah.
So, you know, and there was a lot of networking opportunities that you could access if you went to award school, lots of little kind of get-togethers and things like that. And also you get to meet your tutors and your lecturers who are, you know, industry people. So that was a really important step. And then after that was really just about hustling to, you know, apply for as many interviews as possible, reach out to as many places as possible, really up my LinkedIn game, like really up my LinkedIn game. LinkedIn is so important, guys.
Yeah.
Be good at LinkedIn.
I could not agree more. I've got 2 jobs through LinkedIn.
LinkedIn is, yeah, it's I think a lot of young people looking into, not just into looking to get into advertising, but just in the corporate world in general, they underestimate the value of LinkedIn. They think it's that weird, daggy sort of Facebook thing, but it's like corporate.
Yeah.
It's actually so important and a very helpful tool. So yeah, being good on LinkedIn, being proactive and finding interviews, you know, doing award school or some kind of creative course, because I think that's what's going to help you. Like if you are in a completely different sector of the industry and you're trying to break into, you know, it's like chalk and cheese. Like it really, like personally, I don't think so, but the industry disagrees with me. So like account management and creative, just in the eyes of the industry, there are 2 very, very different worlds, and they cannot collide. So if you want to get into the other world, you need to show some credentials or show something that shows like, no, I have a little spark of creativity in me. So yeah, award school or any kind of like creative formation, like if you want to do, also being, you know what, I'm jumping all over the place, but I have so many thoughts.
Go, shoot.
Also, if you're not good on the tools, become good on the tools, because people these days in advertising are looking for unicorns that know how to do a lot of things, because budgets are tighter, clients are more demanding, and agencies are trying to bring as much in-house as possible to save money. So if you know how to use Photoshop or After Effects or, you know, whatever, that is such a plus, because a lot of the times, you know, you can get away with not knowing how to use the tools if you placed top 10 in award school and you know the right people and your dad plays golf with the CEO. Like, yeah, probably you will maybe get a job, and they will probably pay for you to get good on the tools, because that's what happens for the privileged people. However, if you did not place top 10 and if you don't have these special connections, you need to work twice as hard and know more skills than you think you need to know. So that's probably the tips I would give if you're looking to make that switch.
Yeah,
that's what I did.
Yeah, so getting on the tools, looking for the right people to build your network.
Yeah.
Mastering LinkedIn, and then finding a course to help build your credentials. 4 key points.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm curious, Margot, in terms of the courses and resources that you were looking at, obviously you went with award school. Were there any other resources available out there?
So at the time, award school was the one that just kept popping up. And that was, I mean, it is the leading one. And it's the one that everybody knows. It's the most prestigious one. And I went with it because I was like, well, everyone's talking about this course like it's the bee's knees. So I'm going to do it because I think it's going to get me closer to my goal. That being said, I did find out recently that there's a bunch of other courses. I think it's called a Western Sydney Ad School or something like that. And there is a lot of talent out there that is beyond award school. I think like it's so important that recruiters and people that are in top positions in an agency, they need to get more comfortable with hiring people outside of award school. Because award school, like, whilst it's a fantastic program, not everyone can afford to pay for it upfront because it's an upfront payment, and it can be a lot of money for some people. So I think it's not always accessible. And if you're working more than one job, or if you're not living at home, it can be tricky to balance the night classes and the workload with everything else. And at the end of the day, if you're picking between award school and paying your bills, like, you're probably going to want to pay your bills.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah.
So there's that, but also, there's a lot of TAFE courses you can do that will teach you the Adobe suite. There's a lot of online courses if you're looking for something remote. There's LinkedIn Learning as well. So there's lots of things that you can do, and also just like practical hands-on experience. Like, I was real sneaky, and I got to know the people in the studio at JWT really well, and so I hung out there all the time.
I know, you never used to hang out with us in account management.
I'm not sorry. The studio people were funner. You guys are always on the phone and like emailing and stuff. I probably should have been doing that too, but anyway. So I was a lot of the time I was in the studio, and kind of just always peering over designers' shoulders and kind of seeing how they do things, asking them questions, because I already knew how to use the tools, because I went to like a visual arts and design high school, and so I've been using Photoshop since I was like 12, because that's what young kids do these days.
Your Mac friend, Brent Rambo.
I mean, I wasn't doing anything, grand. I was like changing my eye color and my hair color, going, yeah, that's sick. I'm gonna put that on MySpace. But so I already knew how to use the tools, but I wasn't an expert. So kind of learning from other people in the workplace was really cool. Like, I'd be like, oh, Dani, how do I do that? She's like, oh, it's really simple. You just do this. And I'm like, wow, that's crazy. And it's a lot easier to learn stuff from people, I think, when you're sitting next to them and they're showing you, and it's a lot quicker. Sometimes you look for YouTube tutorials and it takes you 12 minutes to explain how to do something that takes 2 seconds. So I would say, like, there are a lot of other things outside of award school. So don't be discouraged.
Awesome. So, Margot, with the theme of this conversation being changing lanes, I'm keen to know what were some of the challenges you faced specifically going from account management into creative? Because I know you said you were networking with a lot of people, chatting, hustling. What were some of those challenges, and how did you overcome them? So
a lot of the challenges that I faced were being a woman in the industry was it's sort of a gift and a curse at the same time, because people say they want to hire female creatives because it's a very male dominant space. So my recruiter was saying, oh, like, this is awesome. Like, the fact that you're a woman is going to do like wonders for you. They're going to want to hire you because agencies want to hire, female creatives. And I was like, oh, I didn't think that it would work in my favor, but awesome. And I found that was sort of the case. I got a lot of interest from recruiters because they were like, recruiters and like ECDs because I was a female creative. But then what I found was a lot of the time I would just kind of miss out on like the final stage of the recruitment process. I would just drop off, and then they would hire a dude instead of me.
Right.
So that was probably a challenge that I think, had I known, like, I think I was a bit naive and thinking that like my work could just kind of speak for itself and it was a level playing field. I think if I was to kind of go back and do my kind of recruitment process again to get into the creative sector, I would probably be a little bit more ruthless, a little bit more, and like, just, I don't know, like, be a bit more a bulldog, you know what I mean? I just felt like I was like I just kind of treated it like any other job interview, and I was like, my work will speak for itself, you know, my personality will speak for itself, you know, it'll get me over the line. But I think if you are not a straight white male, you need to work a little bit harder. You need to like really just push the envelope as much as possible. You need to like badger them. You need to like follow up, because if you're not top of mind, you're probably going to slip off of their list, to be honest. And that's what happened to me a couple of times. And I also was paired up with a male copywriter at one point, and we interviewed for a place together. And they actually turned around and they hired him without me, and then hired another male art director to plug in with him. Yes. And at the time, I wasn't upset with the copywriter, because, you know, he really needed a job, and he needed it for visa purposes as well. So I was like, totally fair for him. But
did they give you a rationale for that?
Not really. I think they were just saying that. Like, my design skills still needed a bit of work, or like something like that. And that this other guy was like a really good designer, and like, I don't know. So I was like, okay, cool. But, you know, you don't really break up teams like that. That's a bit of a douche move.
But also, like, if you want a designer, hire a designer.
Yeah. Like, anyway, so it was like, it's also like, it's, you know, it's not just about your skills. It's also like, as a team together, do you work well? Like, and is taking one person out of the team, putting someone new, really the best path forward? But anyway, it was a blessing in disguise, because I got where I needed to be in the end. But yeah, the path there was tricky. So that was definitely one challenge. And another challenge was also because of my account management background. Well, if you're looking to change lanes, just brace yourself that in every single interview, they are going to question how good you are, because you came from a different sector. So every time they'd be like, oh, but like, what are your like design skills like? And I would have to kind of explain, like, bitch, I can rattle off design theory all day long. Like, you want me to talk about the elements of design? I'll talk about the elements of design. Like, there were so many things that like people that ECDs would question kind of my knowledge or, you know, talent in, because I came from an account management background, which I just thought was a bit silly, because I was like, you could be overlooking someone that has immense potential or immense talent just because they don't fit the mold of what you think, you know, the perfect creative is. And, you know, and also just overlooking the fact that, okay, yes, I come from an account management background, or I come from a production background, but have you ever thought about how that's actually going to make me a better creative, and how that's actually setting me apart from all your other, you know, what's the word? People on the table. Candidates.
No, totally. And I think in this modern day and age, we need to kind of reassess what does a modern creative look like, you know? And I think, the best creatives are always the ones that can consult clients directly.
There were, for all the challenges that there were, I think, like, in the end, obviously I overcame them. But now I'm like, well, because of my account management background, because of my production background, I've actually never missed an opportunity to sell in some work. There's not been a single, which is pretty incredible, because when I worked at JWT, I saw, unfortunately, a lot of instances where the creative work didn't get sold in, and the client went with something else because they just weren't convinced. And it does happen, and it's definitely unfortunate. But thankfully for me, in my time as a creative lead so far, every single piece of work that I have presented, I have sold in. And it's not just because the work was good. It's because I knew how to sell it in. I knew how to talk to the client, and kind of empathize and you know, mesh well with them. So they trusted me, and they trusted the agency.
Yeah. And, you know, you knew how to speak their language as well, right?
That's right.
There you go.
Took them on the journey.
So
anyone out there is looking to get into account management, get familiar with that phrase.
Take you on the journey. Do a summary of the meeting. So Margot, as we draw towards the end of this interview, I know we've kind of touched on different points of advice throughout the journey and in specific instances. But if you could go back to yourself before you're back at university, and you were giving a lecture to your old class,
Yeah.
What would be the one thing that you would say? What would be the one, I guess, key piece of advice you'd give yourself before going in?
So I've actually given a couple of lectures to prospective students. My boss, Zena, she is a guest lecturer at Macleay. And so I've done a few little guest lectures to kind of prep students going into the industry about what to expect and tips and tricks. So I've thought a lot about this. But I would say the one thing that I think doesn't get spoken enough about is to focus on your own path and to try really, really hard not to compare yourself to everybody around you, because it's exhausting. And I did it a lot. And to be honest, I only really truly learned this lesson about a year ago. But it's exhausting, especially if you're a minority in the industry. Like, you just need to accept that your path is not even going to be remotely the same as someone else that has just a little bit more privilege, a little bit more more well connected, all those kinds of things. And all it's really going to do is make you super jealous and super bitter, and it's going to dampen your creative spirit, which is not what we want. And yeah, like for me, that's the biggest thing. It's like, focus on your path. Like, cool, you didn't make top 10 in award school. Who cares? What are you doing next? Like, what's your plan? Focus on your next step. Because there's no use crying over the fact that, you know, someone that you went to award school with, who you thought you were on par with, got, you know, top 10 and you didn't get top 10, and life is so sad. So it's like, there's no point dwelling on that, because at the end of the day, they're not dwelling on the fact that, you know, that you didn't get top 10, and they're pressing on with their life. So you need to press on with yours and be like, okay, fine, that didn't happen for me, all good, what's my next step? You know, who am I going to contact next? And like, don't cry, because I feel like I'm outing a lot of my thoughts here. Like, don't cry because this guy got a job super easily and you didn't, and you're super resentful because, you know, and he's not even that good. Like, there's no point dwelling on that. And I think, like, if you can just focus on yourself and kind of focus on your journey, make sure that you are constantly trying to move forward and just kind of rise above it. That's really the best advice, is to rise above the bullshit, because there is so much bullshit, unfortunately, in the industry. And the good agencies are out there, and good people to work with are definitely out there, but you just need to keep propelling yourself forward, and you'll get there eventually, and it'll be oh so sweet.
I love that, Margot. It's great. It reminds me of something I read recently by Simon Sinek, where it's kind of your career as a notion. It's almost like an infinite game, where there's not an end destination. You don't just become successful, then that's it. You have days where you're ahead and days where you're behind. And I think, you know, when hardship comes, yes, you're behind, but you know that tomorrow is another chance. Have a go and just give it your best shot. And ultimately, if you give it your best shot, you'll have a fulfilling career anyway. So irrespective of where you are.
It's really all about like for me, what constitutes success is probably different to someone else's version of success. And I think, you know, understanding that really helps you overcome a lot of challenges. Like for me, success is feeling really happy in my job, wanting to come to work Monday through Friday, and not dreading the idea of going into work. Like, yeah, sure, sometimes you have those days and whatever. But overall, like, if I feel happy and fulfilled at work, and I love the work I'm doing, and I love the people I'm working with, I don't care who my clients are. I don't care what kind of work I'm doing, whether it's a TVC or a print ad or a social campaign. Like, if it's something that I really enjoy doing and I'm doing it with the people that I love and in a space that I feel really supported and, you know, cared for, that's success to me.
Awesome.
And I don't care what my title is. So, you know, I think those are minute details. And titles change all the time.
Exactly right.
Manager to engagement manager to like content and production coordinator to like, it's like so many different titles that all just mean nothing. It's all about the skills.
That's it.
Yeah.
It. Well, Margot, thank you so much for coming on here and sharing your wisdom, giving inspiring confidence for those people who are in account management thinking of going into creative, or in production thinking about going into creative, or the other way around. Who knows? Either way, I think
some people go from creative to account management, and that's okay.
That's absolutely fine. We're all for it. All right, mate. Well, thanks again, and Take care.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on board.